Hey everyone, welcome back to the Devil's Advocates podcast. I'm JP. I'm joined with BrattPack and Jake as per usual. I guess we should just start with what Saravalli said earlier today on DFO Rundown about how the Devils are kind of looking to keep Schmid in the AHL next season.
Are you trying to say we're going to be talking goalies this episode?
Oh, I'm absolutely saying that.
Yeah, man, you just get right into it. There was at least we got names in the introduction, but yeah, we should probably preface this episode with this is the goalie speculation episode, because there is a lot of buzz around Devils goalies right now, and I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't expect there to be quite this much. I thought that a move was possible, but that Vanacek and Schmid were kind of the guys, and Fitzgerald is usually very calm, cool, and collected when he says things. And, I expected his mantra for the summer to be, yeah, no, we're cool with what we have, but if something comes along, we won't say no kind of thing. It just felt very Fitzgerald. But, yeah, like Saravalli said, the Devils are looking to keep Schmid in the AHL for most, if not all of the year if they can. So that brings us here to speak about goalie moves and all the crazy things that can happen. Because as we all know, the goalie market is like, whose line is it anyway, where the points are made up and, nothing makes sense or nothing is real. Or I probably should have gotten that quote, before we started here. So where do we want to start, boys?
I think it's actually everything is made up and the points don't matter.
Yeah. No, that would have been really, really smart of me to look up right before we started.
That quote came out before he was alive, so it's kind of brutal. He had to correct you.
Yeah, how does that make you feel?
Hey, listen, when I was sick in like third grade, while everyone else was watching Family Feud, I was flipping the channel to Whose Line Is It Anyway, okay? I watched a fair amount.
Yeah, no, love that show growing up. But as far as the goalie market does go, I think it is pretty apparent that we are very much in the mix on probably at least a couple names out there, just keeping feelers and talking to different teams. Multiple different insiders from Saravalli to Friedman have brought us up in connection to goalies. Nothing directly tied, although there's been some contention about the verbiage used by both of those guys on how much they are linking us to a goalie or another. We do know from a presser that Tom gave, I think it was either shortly after, it was either the Timo or Bratt deals, or it was like one of the season ending ones, but that they talk goalies almost every day in the management office.
Yep.
Whether it's internally or externally, just what are we looking at? And again, I mean, we as a fan base know this roster is fairly stacked from a forward perspective. And if our young guns, Luke is a safe bet, I would say. And even if Nemec isn't ready, we have that stopgap that we brought in with Miller. We have a more than capable defense. Even if you want to argue it maybe takes a half step back on the early part of the season, I think by the end of the season, it will be a clear upgrade overall. So really, the only question mark is, I would say, playoff goaltending, as Vanacek gave us a insanely solid regular season. Above average is probably putting it a little lightly. He wasn't an elite goalie in the league, but he was way more than serviceable.
Mm-hmm.
And then Blackwood was, he had his moments. He had some downtimes. He was mostly injured. And then Schmid played a solid regular season. And then we all know what he did in the playoffs as well. So to kind of bring that full circle, when we're talking goalies, there's a few names out there. The big ones obviously being Hellebuck. We know Gibson's being tossed around. How much you want to really call him a big name or not still. I see whispers of Saros. How much he actually is available, we're going to get into. And then obviously the Boston goalies are still being tossed around there. And I even have a little list thrown together of maybe some wild card options that probably none of them would be my preference. I'd probably just rather stick with Vanacek and Schmid. But if the Saravalli report is to be followed, they want Schmid down in the AHL for, if not a majority, the entire year. So if that is the case, they're at least looking to bring in someone else to back up Vanacek, if not bring in someone to fully split or move Vanacek into more of a backup type role. So if we hold all that to be true, who would your guys' number one acquisition be not just from a fills the net and is the best goalie option, but I'm talking full circle. I'm talking assets you'd have to give up, long-term outlook with the goalie, contract, the whole package. What are you guys looking at?
Swayman, no doubt.
Interesting.
Is that not?
Elaborate.
Swayman is really good already, and he's only 24. And Allmark just obviously had one of the greatest seasons like ever, so I'm sure the Bruins are kind of inclined to keep that. And his contract is probably going to be pretty reasonable compared to, say, Hellebuck or Saros' next contract. And I feel like he would be kind of the cheapest to acquire.
Isn't that kind of... I mean, I think Swayman's better than Vanacek, but wasn't that kind of the approach we took with Vanacek of going with kind of what's the most affordable and just kind of hope he steps up and works out? I kind of get the vibe that, whether actually, I'm not really answering the question here because this isn't like what I think, but I feel like, in putting in Fitzgerald's shoes here, it feels like they're leaning more towards taking the swing on one of the big name, maybe more money, but a little more security, at least in terms of we've had a couple guys that, we had some patience with when the team wasn't really at its peak yet, that we could see, hey, we'll see if this works out, get a reasonable deal. But I feel like now that the team, after last year making it to the second round and putting up 110 points and being the, powerhouse favorite that they've turned into, I don't know. I feel like Swayman would come in a little underwhelming.
Would you believe me if I told you that Swayman was 9th in the league in goals saved above expected?
For the sake of whatever you're about to tell me, in addition to that, I'm gonna say no. Screw you, man. I don't believe you.
Yes, he was. Anyway, yeah. I mean, he was really, really good last year. Like, underratedly good, because obviously Allmark had the spotlight there. But I mean, in 37 games, he had 24 goals saved above expected. So like, he's a really, really serviceable goaltender already. And I mean, again, he's only 24, and as temperamental as goalies are, if you get a 24-year-old that's in like the 91st percentile for goaltenders in the league, like, give me that. Give me that.
Yeah, so I love Swayman. I think from a age and track record point of view, he is, if not the best, he's at least top 3 of a goalie that we could acquire. Really, for me, it is the age factor. If he is this going forward, he lines up so perfectly with our core that that's like, you have your team. Yeah. Your goalie is locked up. You have your forwards. You have your it's a wrap. You don't have to worry about any sort of aging curve or him burning out, or there's always injury concerns with goalies, as we know. We ran into that with Corey previously. So nothing is obviously a sure thing in this sport. But my only hesitation on Swayman is with Boston basically figuring out their cap situation, it looks like. It seems like they could make it work with their remaining RFAs and to fill out their roster and running it back with Swayman Allmark. I think it's actually going to be kind of hard to pry him from them now at this point. Before, when they still had Hall, and we're maybe still thinking about bringing like Pertuzzi back and all that other stuff, I think it could have been a lot easier. But with the moves that they're making, especially if you consider that Bergeron and Krejci aren't coming back, and they're Boston, they are not going to go into a rebuild. They are going to try and compete year in and year out. They are not looking for futures. They probably are going to look for this goalie tandem to buoy them through an entire season. So with that, I think if you did want to try and pry Swayman from them, you're giving up some roster guys, at least one, if not two, and at least probably a pick. If high-ish, I don't know if he would come in at a first, but I mean, he's got to be highly coveted, right? I mean, his numbers, even if you just want to go from the boring stats, I'm very much a goal save above expected guy. I think the other stats are a lot more team oriented.
Yep.
that they just it factors in way too much. But if you did want to go with the boring one, I mean, the guy is not put under a 900 in the NHL. Actually, he hasn't put under a 914 was his worst NHL season. Last year, he was a 920 in 37 games. I don't put a huge amount of stock in it because Boston was just the wagon, just unstoppable force in the regular season. He did get lit up in the playoffs a bit, but I don't fault him for that because he basically got brought in super cold when Ullmark was getting shelled and was just fed to the dogs that when Florida was rolling over them. So before that, in 5 playoff games, he put up a 911. And when you're putting in, like, I think his average here, you're looking at almost a 927-ish. NHL over 88 NHL games, you're almost pushing a 9.3 save percentage average. That's not nothing. And once again, when you factor in his age, but he's an RFA, he is young, he's valuable. So to me, the acquisition cost might be the barrier to getting him. Now,
Yeah,
I saw your face a little bit on that one, JP, of how much he might cost to get. What do you think his acquisition cost would be?
If Boston is, actually trying to still compete,
They are.
Well, right.
It's Boston.
Right, of course. But since let me say since they're trying to compete, I am kind of projecting. I'm going off of Evolving Hockey's model here. Swayman should be getting somewhere in the 4s, for however long. But if they're willing to supplement Vanacek for Swayman because they are still trying to compete, and Vanacek is obviously more than serviceable as a second goaltender. I could see something like Vanacek, maybe a 3rd rounder, and then like a young up and coming NHL level player, like Nolan Foote, for example.
Why would Boston take that though? If Swayman's only going to make $1 million more than Vanacek, why even do that?
Yeah,
What's
I don't.
their
I'm
incentive?
not doing PP on this one. I don't think that makes sense for Boston. I think they need. So I agree where Nolan Foote maybe comes in with having a cheaper contract. They need cheap contracts. They need cost controlled guys. But Foote isn't an established, proven NHLer. They need that. So you're probably talking with our roster. I mean, most of our guys are locked in.
Well, yeah, that's the problem.
I think so. I don't think we would give this up, but I guarantee if those discussions, no, you don't guarantee. My thought would be if those discussions were had, they're looking at Dawson Mercer. They're asking for Mercer.
Probably.
I don't see anyone else on our roster that's established NHL that is movable, young, and is going to be someone they want going forward, whether it's center or at wing. He just makes way too much sense for them, and his play style also would very much fit in with Boston. I don't think we give Mercer up though to get Swayman, and I think that would be a pretty hard line in the ground from Boston. So if you're that in on Swayman, and Boston saying it's Mercer or no deal in this, however, we could then discuss whether we're adding or they're adding at that point, because now Mercer Swayman I think is an argument for who really needs to add a little bit more on either side. What are your thoughts on that? Are you moving Mercer for Swayman? Exactly.
No.
And again, I don't think we move Vitek out for him because they want Schmidt in the AHL. So it's either they're looking for a backup or they're looking for someone to play ahead of Vanacek or at least balance that, again, 1A, 1B type situation. So it's with it in mind that Schmidt, the idea is to put him down in the AHL. For me, it makes a lot of these goalie acquisitions a lot more complicated.
Right. Well, that's the thing too, because you're not really, or at least the goalies that are available outside of Gibson, who I don't want, but that's a tangent we can get on later. Mm-hmm. None of the teams are rebuilding, so they're not going to want futures, and what we have a surplus of right now is futures. So it's tough. It's really tough.
And the one thing we don't have is a 1st-round pick next year because of the Timo Meier condition. So we're kind of hands are tied there, in terms of being able to offer that.
I believe we can actually trade that.
We can.
Sure.
Our 2024 first.
Yeah. I think
Is
it would
tied
just.
up?
movable.
I think it would just slide to 2025 if we were to move it.
I'll double check. I'll double check it right now. But
Yeah.
while I'm pulling that up, was there any other? While we're on Boston, is there anything that would make you want to go after Olmark?
Half retention and us not giving up a whole lot.
So
coming
not,
off of
not
coming
happy.
off of Vezina season, it's impossible. It
Right.
just his value is just so inflated right now, whether he is a Vezina, goalie for the rest of his career or not. It's just so inflated right now that buying on him right now would be so overpriced.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a world in which we get Olmark. Unless Boston commits to, hey, we're rolling with Swayman as our number one, so we are giving up on Olmark completely. So here's Olmark. Which is not going to happen.
Right.
So clarification on our first round pick, as long as I'm understanding this correctly. So our first rounder, obviously the pick was made. We weren't a top 2 pick, so that was already moved. The other pick we moved was a 2024 second round pick with the following conditions. If we had made the Eastern Conference Finals this past season, and Meyer had played in 50% of the games, the pick would have became the 2024 first. We did not make the Eastern Conference Finals, so it does not become that first. So that condition was not met.
That doesn't apply to next year either.
No, so the only hypothetical where it would have then slid to 2025 was if we made the Eastern Conference Finals, Meyer played 50% of the games, the second would have became a 2024 first instead of a second. And then if that 2024 first was top 10, then we would have kept it, and it would have slid to 2025, no protections. We didn't make the Eastern Conference Finals, so it's just a second. We have our first.
Okay, our first is totally in play. You know what? To be honest, as the playoffs wrapped up, I had kind of forgot to update my knowledge of that. I was still working under the trade deadline knowledge,
That trade had a lot of parts to it, so I understand not knowing all the nuances of those conditions and stuff on it.
Yeah. So one name that I think we already brought up, but want to kind of discuss a little more in depth, which I feel like has been presented as the second biggest possibility, or maybe second or third, debatably. But when we look at age, term, salary, and level of elite, we'll call it, I feel like UC Saros has been in a lot of these conversations. I feel like the big 3 names, which we'll kind of get to one by one here, are Hellebuck, Saros, and Gibson. If Gibson is even on the move, we'll talk about the drama there. But I feel like Saros, if there were to be a move made, would be the best fit for the Devils. He's 28. He's still got 2 years left at $5 million. We're not handing out an 8-year, $9.5 million contract right now. There's still some wiggle room there. The big thing, just like we talked about with Swayman, I think, unfortunately, is even more true for Nashville now that Barry Trotz has stepped in and has made it clear that he's really not, he's there to really, really shake things up and try to, make that team competitive. Will Nashville part with Saros? What do we think?
Probably not.
No.
All right, got my answer.
hard no. With Saros, I'm pretty positive Trotz had already made comments that it was highly, highly unlikely, or whatever words he used, that Saros was going to be on the move. Something tells me the only way that happens was one of those can't say no packages. They're McDavid on 50% or something stupid that just is not happening.
Right.
Especially when you look at the rest of their off-season moves. I mean, they brought in Ryan O'Reilly for 4 years at 32 years old. That does not scream to me a team that's looking to rebuild or even retool. That looks to me like a team that has a very strong goalie, has a defense, fairly veteran-type defense, and then is supplementing their offense with Nashville Barry Trotz-type players. And to me, I see no scenario where we offer any package close that would make them think of moving Saros. I agree that if we could handpick any goalie, 2 years at $5 million, you got a little bit of retention on that. Perfect scenario, really. I think there's one other goalie with a little bit of retention that's also on a very short-term deal that we're going to talk about that also makes sense. That has some other caveats to it. But that one, Saros to me, I don't see it. I don't see any scenario where we give up anything close to what it would take.
Yeah, I don't think Nashville is selling on Saros. I think if there is a goaltender in Nashville that's on the move, it's Askarov, to be honest with you, because I think Trotz is so set on not rebuilding that he would sell his stud prospect goalie before he sells his current stud goalie.
I could see that, but that I think is it Askarov or Askarov?
I think it's Askarov.
Askarov would be very expensive.
Yes.
Very, very, very expensive.
Which I wouldn't mind doing that, but
what it would cost would I think set us back from where we're.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The window's open. We're not. I don't think we're trading for big pieces for a window that's opening in the future. So the other, I actually real quick, I agree with both of you that I think Saros would be the best fit if we could somehow land him. I don't think they're selling. I just don't think he's anywhere near the market. And we're not really in the business of overpaying, making those offers, someone can't refuse. Like we're so set. We're really looking to add stuff that makes sense, and we have the capital to do so, but we're not, trying to make bonehead moves. But I think we should talk about the biggest name that the Devils have been linked to, and I said this. I don't remember if I said this in the episode that got scrapped or the episode that we re-recorded. I don't know which cut it made, but it feels nice that the Devils are one of those teams now that when a big name player hits the market, I feel like you usually see the same 5 or 6 teams linked every single time. Like no matter what the fit is, it's always guy hits market and it's here's who's interested: Boston, Vegas, the Rangers, the Maple Leafs, and it's just who's in the arms race that is in on everyone. And it's really, really nice that we're starting to see the Devils on those lists. I feel like every guy that comes up now, it's teams that this would make sense for, teams that are interested, Devils right at the top of the list every time. But the big one on the market right now that we've been linked to kind of heavily, I'd say, is Hellebuck out of Winnipeg. However, there's some baggage that comes with this one because the reports out, I think from pretty much everyone, whether it's Weeks or Saravelli or any national reporter, has been saying that the big hiccup in trying to acquire Hellebuck is that he wants Vasilevsky money. He's talking $9.5 million. He's 30, 31, I don't know, 30 turning 31. Wants, this is him chasing the bag. This is his big payday. This is his big contract. What do we think here?
So he's 30, turned it a couple months ago, so you can basically assume full season play. This would be his 30-year-old season, essentially. He was the other name I was referencing as far as a big name, short-term contract that is appetizing just for a rental type run. You look at our roster, you look at 1 year on Hellebuck. He has been consistently elite for years and years and years. No injury history, absolute workhorse that plays an obscene amount of games. If we were somehow able to make the cap work where he came in, would have to be retained while holding on to Vanacek. Almost every scenario previously that I came up with was moving Vanacek out to get Hellebuck because Winnipeg also still wants to try and be somewhat relevant. They don't want just pure futures. They want at least some guys that are going to be able to play on their roster. I did not see how the money worked. But, even a little retention plus Vanacek on the way out. So we would need, we'd have to get 50% retention here. I could even see a scenario where if we're looking to keep Vanacek in this, Hellebuck retained, get another team involved, another retention for a year there. Now you're really talking, depending on the cost there, if we could get a rental price on him, I would absolutely do that. I would be all for that. Tom's big thing with everybody he's acquired, Timo, he's talked about it with Toffoli, Holla, we want these guys to come in. He didn't even talk extensions with Meyer until after the year. He's not going to talk to Toffoli until after the year. He didn't talk to Holla until after the year. Come here, see what's cooking here, see what this locker room and how young and energetic and skilled this team is. Look at what Jersey has to offer and take a goddamn discount to come and play here, and let's build a dynasty.
The Devils are coming.
With Hellebuck, for me, I think one of the biggest selling points is another one that Timo loved was that travel schedule, baby. Jersey travel schedule compared to Winnipeg.
Winnipeg. Oh,
Woo!
man.
Yeah, Winnipeg, I think, has one of the worst. And you compare that to Jersey, he's going to play less. He would, if we kept Vanacek especially, but even if we had Schmid with him, if it had to work out that way, he's going to potentially would play a lot less games. He's not going to end the season on a 14-game bender and be exhausted for playoffs. And he's going to sleep in his bed 30 or 40 more nights a season, like Graves said. So, yeah.
Well, to that point, real quick, and this is just a side note, do you guys know how many times the New Jersey Devils are getting on a plane in the month of October this season?
I'm going to say 2.
One time.
Single time.
Wow.
They are getting on an airplane one time because they have mostly home games, and the away games are, Long Island, Manhattan, Philadelphia, Boston,
Man,
whatever they are.
That would have been sick in like February, March. I'll take it, but
yeah, but no, you're right. I mean, coming from a place like Winnipeg, you gotta think that is a massive, massive thing. The only thing that's very interesting with the price of Hellebuck is they're not trading him because they are, reconstructing their roster. They're trading him because he doesn't want to come back. He's the one asking out here, so you got to think that they're not looking for futures. This isn't the initiation of a rebuild like other teams that get rid of, their star goalie like this. So they are going to want, retool NHL ready players. Like you said, they're not really looking to slow down too much here. For all intents and purposes, before he asked out, they made the playoffs this year. I don't think they were looking to slow down at all. So we kind of come back to that same, conversation we just had with Swayman, where money's money. We obviously they have to make the money work, but what true NHL talents do we have that are at least relatively expendable? Not much.
I don't think we have any, to be completely honest with you. I think the big hitch in kind of our goalie stuff now is that apparently we want Schmid in the AHL. If we didn't want Schmid in the AHL, then there's a possibility of Vanacek getting moved and then Schmid playing backup. But if we don't want Schmid in that role, then,
Right. With Vanacek off the table, that changes everything.
Right. Completely.
I completely agree with you guys. I wanted to make at least one other point, but I do want to dive a bit more into the cap situation around that.
Yeah.
Because I think if Tom could make it work, he would. The other thing is, while I would prefer it to be a rental price and move, I don't think Winnipeg wants it to be, because they are under no obligation to move him. They can just hold him. He could get moved at the deadline, or who knows how exactly it plays out. I had heard that they're still trying to convince him to stay and re-sign there,
as they should.
I do know, I believe Hellebuck is actually a pretty big nature and ice fishing guy. So it's not even like he's a big, I hate it in Winnipeg, I want to get out of here like a lot of other players. He does apparently like the more serene in nature options that Winnipeg has to offer.
New Jersey's perfect there.
Yeah, ice fishing is abundant here year round.
I mean, ice fishing may not be, but fishing, New Jersey's incredible.
Yeah, it's a little different. Fishing and ice fishing, a little bit different vibes.
Tomato. I'm doing what I can here.
I'm not against extending him. I am not extending him for Heli contract or Heli. Bassey contract. It's that money, that term, no shot. You give me Hellebuck at 5 years. If basically the shorter the better for me. But you gotta give to take here. So 5 years. Let's say try and meet him in the middle a little bit. He's gonna take a discount. 7 is probably where I'd want to start trying to convince him to stay. And that's even because I don't think he takes less than that. I just don't see a world where he takes the shorter term and much less money outside of he loves it. He's like, this is my dream come true. Oh my God, jerseys is hidden gem. Thank you, Tom, for that PowerPoint. How could I ever have missed this? It's hard. So, yeah, as we're talking about it, Hellebuck, it's a hard, again, with Schmidt going down, keeping Vanacek, it's hard to see how you make it work.
Yep.
The only roster, he's not even a roster guy, that I could see being the big piece of the trade outside of, a first round pick and stuff is Holtz. And again, Holtz is an ELC contract. I mean, that, again, we're talking money is tight here as we're trying to fit all these guys. Those ELCs are very valuable. When you factor in how much is a guy bringing and how much is he costing, are you moving out an ELC of a guy that can be a top 6 player for you going forward? Ugh.
Look, just get Hellebuck in New Jersey. Let me take him to Hoagie Haven and Princeton one time. You'll get him at 5.5. I guarantee it.
I'm down for it. I'll take you up on that.
Hoagie Haven rocks.
let me get him. Let me get him down to the shore for one day. We have $4 million for Connor Hellebuck. No, but the money, that's, we're almost hitting like a catch-22 with all of these guys here, where the acquisition cost and the salary cap, we pride ourselves on being so locked in and set with the guys that we have, but unfortunately, when it comes to making upgrades, you really can't be locked and set with all the guys you have. You gotta give to get, like you said. So I want to throw, actually no, before I throw out a couple other names, the third kind of bigger goalie that was alleged to be on the market, then put out a pretty firm statement saying he's not on the market. We got to talk about this Gibson situation out in Anaheim, because the report came out that John Gibson had asked for a trade and said, the quote was aggressive. The quote was along the lines of, "I will never play another game for the Anaheim Ducks." Like it was an aggressive, direct quote. And then literally hours later, the statement from Gibson's lawyer or his agent comes out, and it was a letter written directly to Frank Saravelli, which is hilarious, by the way. It's not even that he puts out a statement saying, hey, this is where we're at. He wrote it directly to Mr. Frank and said, listen, bud, you got your shit all wrong. My client never said that. He just went straight at him like, you did not check in with us. We never said that. Shame on you for putting that out into the world. And Mr. Saravelli himself clapped back. Yep. He clapped back at him and said, "Listen, pal, I'm not your bud, pal." He went back at him and said, "Remember the last time that you said that I, falsified a report?" And he came with receipts. He posted the screenshots of the agent saying he was wrong about something else, and then the thing that he said came true like a day later, and fully went at him here. So all of this is to say that we have no idea where Gibson sits on the market right now. It may be true that he wants out. It may not be true that he wants out. As of right now, he's saying that he doesn't, but the reports came out that maybe he does, behind closed doors. So I think we should discuss the option anyway. I feel kind of the same way, maybe some of the points we made about Hellebuck, where, the money I think is going to be the big thing here. But what do you guys think?
I don't even think it's the money. I think he's just a shitty goaltender.
I got a couple of things because this is actually going to bounce us around a little bit. So with Gibson, as a statement his agent released, never outright said at any point in any way that he was adamant about staying. It did not really dispute the fact that he wants out. It pushed back against the I'm never going to play another game in Anaheim point. It said that Gibson loved the fans. It did not say Gibson wants to stay. So to me, that was insanely telling. To take a slight slide back, I was really playing around with the money here. Assuming Kevin Ball signs for 1.11-ish, right? It's got to be really close to that 1.1, if not lower. you yeet Brendan Smith down to the AHL. There's no penalty to do so. You can bury his full contract.
And I have to cut you off real quick. Not Colin Miller. He is staying in the
Correct.
NHL. I
Correct.
learned that very firmly. Please don't kick me off the podcast.
We're still thinking about it. So that's Nemec coming up, and then actually, if Nemec stays down and Smith stays up, the money still works, but it's a lot tighter. If you get Hellebuck at basically 50% retained, it's like whatever the math I did was like 45% or whatever it was, but basically 50% retained just by Winnipeg. I sent nothing back because I just wanted to see if we could get him and keep our full roster. With a 22-man roster, we would have $615,000 in cap space, keeping Vanacek, Helly basically 50% retained, Kevin Ball at a 1.1, and then you can make it work with Nemec or Smith, and then it's the forward group with Holtz and Foote on their ELCs. And it works.
Yikes.
Another thing I wanted to throw out real quick is if Schmid is a lock, let's just assume Schmid's a lock for the AHL. Does Shallegren get that backup role and Vivi does go back in a Hellebuck trade? Shalgren's the backup for the season behind Hellebuck. Schmid's in the AHL for the year, and he comes up to really be the playoff backup if Shalgren's not like blowing our minds or anything. I mean, Shalgren's on a $775 deal. He's even cheaper.
To be honest, I don't understand that. I don't understand getting him at all because, wanting to keep Schmid in the AHL.
It's
Dogs
being hurt.
I guess it feels like they're committing to, Shalgren being the backup to Vanacek as opposed to making one of these moves that we're discussing right now, and I do not think that's the move at all.
I don't think that's the case. I think Dawes is going to be out months to start the season. So he's going to be out a really long time. So even if Schmid is in the AHL, Shalgren's going to be the backup for Schmid, probably.
Right. So Shalgren AHL, Colin Miller NHL. Got it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Again, I said, he's there to be the Dawes injury cover, stopgap, however you want to put it.
For sure.
But again, I was just like, how could the money work? How could we make this NHL roster as best as it possibly could be? How do you make the money work?
3 teams.
Yes, that was the other one.
It's
that
3
I had
teams.
brought up. You make it a 3-team trade, double retention. Again, it can work. But then you're probably talking, and you're moving at least the first, if not another pick with Hellebuck. You got to move at least a roster player and a prospect probably. And then you also have to throw out at least probably a second-round pick just to, third-round pick, at least that area to get another team interested in holding retention for the year. And it's doable, but you're throwing a lot in. You're basically, your capital for any sort of trade deadline acquisition is essentially out the door. But we get Hellebuck. Oof, I mean, we're favorites, right? I don't see any other way. So.
I mean, yeah, we're already arguably favorites.
Yeah.
To Hellebuck. I thought we moved on to Gibson.
So with Gibson, I'm with JP. I'm really not interested.
Yeah.
It's to me, if he was what he was, I'd be interested. If he had those insane seasons and was just getting buried, win-loss wise by being on Anaheim, I'm there. I mean, this was his first season under 900, but you are taking a big risk because he is still 6.4 for 4 more seasons. If I'm getting 4 seasons of a guy, I want to be sure. I want to be sure that he is going to play at that level because that's one of those moves that you make that and you are risking ruining this window. Or at least putting yourself in such a bind to get out from under it that it's just a massive headache that you did not need to give yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key word in all of that was, he isn't a good goalie. he hasn't been a good goalie for a few years now. If you want to go like the Cope route, yeah, he was good at one point, and yeah, he's playing in front of probably the worst defense in the past 20 years. But even looking at goals saved above expected, which is less of a team stat, an individual stat, he sucks. He's just bad.
Remember how we talked before this episode about being nice?
Yeah.
No. It's not going to happen on this podcast, I'm sure. If we don't like a guy,
We're not going to try to get John Gibson on.
I mean, I'd love that. I mean, that'd be awesome, but
Yeah.
he's not going to be here. So, yeah, it's just rough. Again, if I would love for him to get acquired by some team and he has a decent bounce back, but for where we are, it's not worth the risk. It's just if he was only 1 year, if he had 1 year on this contract and nothing else was out there, and you told me we could keep Vanacek and grab him, that's like the only scenario I'm even like listening. But 4 years, no shot.
Even then, dude, I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot ball. Like, seriously.
I trust our goalie department and Kane and Delos to be very smart in who we are going after.
Yeah.
And looking at goals saved above expected. And even for anyone that I'm a big PDO cast listener. I love Dimitri. I love the content he brings out. Definitely give them a listen. They did a full episode on goalies and fits. They were using an analytic tool. I think it's, do you know what I'm talking about, JP? Where it basically does, it tracks the type of shots goalies give up the high danger chances from. So basically, are they weak on their glove side? Are they weak rebound wise? Yada, yada, yada. And it basically tries to match style of goalie with their weak points to teams that give up those less than anybody.
That's not StatCast, is it?
I think it's StatCast.
Yeah.
They actually did a dive on Hellebuck going to us, and one of their things was the thing Hellebuck is weakest at is actually something our defense gives up the most of.
Woo.
Their counter though was basically the thing he's weak at is the thing basically every goalie is weak at, and it's the thing most teams give up the most of. We do it a bit more than some other teams comparatively. I think we were in like the bottom third of that in the league. But it's just, I think it was like, like high glove or high blocker side shots. It's just the thing goalies are going to give up. But, maybe, you look at, I wish I had like access to that because then I could really narrow down on the goalie I'd be looking for. But that's something the team, what I'm getting at is that's something the team has access to.
Right.
And so I would trust them to find that right fit when we are if they're looking for that franchise goalie. And maybe that's like a Swayman, but again, cost to acquire, very difficult. Gibson, probably not worth the risk, especially on that long-term contract. Hellebuck's tough to make the money work, but doable. It's doable. There are routes to make it work. But if to make that work, you almost feel obligated to get the extension, and there's another roadblock in the team wanting to do it.
Yeah, respectfully with the extension, fuck that.
Yeah. No good. So I know we're getting pretty close on time here. Was there any other comments on the big names that we discussed before I'm going to rapid fire some wild card hot take? Maybe this person is a thought in their minds as just a stopgap to whatever long-term plan they have. Like, maybe Saros when he only has 1 year left. If Nashville crashes and burns this season, Saros is available next year. And so they want to have that option available. Or,
right.
There's always something next year or the year after where we're still going to be super competitive.
Yeah, one name that I think doesn't really fit into quite the wild cards that I think is still worth mentioning and kind of the more main crew at least is Logan Thompson. I feel like he's a little more in the Swayman camp of things where he's 26, so he's young enough. I wouldn't say, super young, but 26 is young enough. His numbers are pretty similar. His goals against average is a little bit higher. I don't know what he is above expected. I have to check that. Save percentage is pretty similar. But in terms of cost of acquisition, I think Vegas has made it clear they're kind of moving forward with Aiden Hill, and Logan Thompson has made it clear that he does not want to share his net. So it seems like he's going to be on the market, and I think he's a pretty formidable option. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'd totally be in for Logan Thompson. I think he's pretty good. This year, just since you mentioned it, goals saved above expected. In 37 games, he saved exactly 1/10 of one goal above expected.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean that's definitely a name that I would be interested in. I think he would be a lot cheaper than any of the options that we've mentioned so far, especially because Vegas is committed to Aiden Hill.
So my biggest pushback on that is, yeah, sure, I'd be interested. Probably, if he had to be traded, probably is not too expensive relatively to some other guys. But I kind of discussed this on my morning show when I did the goalie episode. I see absolutely no reason why Vegas would move him. Vegas is a cap spending team. He is making less than $767,000. He is clearly a capable enough goalie. If he doesn't want to share a net with Aiden Hill, tough luck. Tough luck. I mean, play or don't, I guess. I don't see why Vegas forces their hand. Leonard's out probably for his career. I mean, I hope he's back. I'm a big Leonard fan, but
Yeah.
I don't see why they move him. He's so cheap. They're going to spend to the cap. Even if they, I don't see why they do it. It makes no sense to me why, because in their depth they have their oldest goalie is Patura, 24. Everyone else is 22, 21, 20. I don't know if they're looking to throw those guys in to the Sharks. What other goalies are out there that they're going to acquire that's going to be as cheap as him? I mean, I'm going to throw out a couple names that are going to be a little bit more expensive, but then why would they want to spend more money when they already have a guy? It just, to me, sure, it maybe makes sense for us. I don't see why it makes sense for them.
Right.
So I'm going to throw out some random names. We're going to do it real quick. I think it's going to go really easy because you're going to hate basically all of these.
Great.
This is no particular order. I'm just going to throw the names out, right? And I'm going to give my little notes that I had. I'll let you guys give your thoughts, and I'm going to quickly move on. So another name that we know was being looked to move due to cap reasons, Matt Murray. So note on Matt Murray was for us to even make the money work, we'd have to have Toronto retain, which they don't want to, and we probably would have to bring another team in to retain, which we don't want to do that either.
Right.
Nope. But for Matt Murray.
Good. We're all in agreement. No shot. Anyone that's arguing for Matt Murray, I don't know where you're coming from. There's
that
a few
was
other
so
ones.
Bad that I almost don't want to hear the rest.
It almost gets worse.
Oh God.
So I'm going to move on to LA. They are currently carrying 3 goalies. They got Talbot, who has a no trade clause. I don't think they're looking to move him. They just re-signed him, I think, at that $1 million contract. They've got Phoenix Copley, no trade protections, 1.5. And then they got David Rittich at $175,000. All of these guys are pending UFAs. I believe all 3 of them were just signed to these extensions on the 1 year. I don't see why a team's going to carry 3 goalies, but when all 3 of your goalies are totaling out at 3.375, not like it's a cap issue for them there. It really just stuck out to me as teams typically don't carry 3. None of them are waiver exempt, so they would have to go through waivers. So there is maybe a trade route there with them. What are your guys' thoughts on anything stick out to you on those 3?
I'd say okay to Phoenix Copley. That's about it.
No, I just don't think that any of those, kind of how we talked about, a couple of the trade options that we discussed were like, oh, yeah, that sounds good for us, but why would they do that? I think it's kind of the opposite here where it's like, that's not what we're going for. We're not going for a guy like Phoenix Copley. If we're going to make a move, we're going to make a move, and that's not it.
Right.
Did any, just real quick, if you have it in front of you, JP, did any of these guys put up numbers better than you would expect? Almost, I'm not even saying they have, again, I'm not looking top of the league here. I'm looking at they're saving above expected. They're doing pretty well. There's maybe something there that if they want to be brought into backup Vanacek so Schmidt can get full HL time, and then, they're basically just cast aside when we bring Schmidt up for playoffs anyway. Are these guys like a good stopgap for the year, basically?
So just for context, Vanacek in 52 games saved just above 5 goals above expected. Phoenix Copley saved 4.7 in 37 games. So he's serviceable.
Yeah, no, that's again. So I'm with you there. 1 year, very cheap deal. Money would easily work. The only reason, again, I think that they would do it is they're carrying 3. They're not going to just send one through waivers to get it clean for free. They'd rather get some sort of asset back.
Yeah.
And they're a playoff competing team. You know, they're going to want to spend to the cap. They just did a big move for Pierre-Luc Dubois. They're looking to win out there. So, you know, that's kind of what, you know, stood out to me a bit for them. Next team, again, let me double check this because one of my other teams actually threw me for a loop and moved a goalie. But I got 4 more names, each probably worse than the next. All right.
Great. I'm ready.
All FAs here, all free agents. We're not talking trades. This is pure money, boys. Probably all cheap. You ready? We got Halak.
Oh, no.
We got Halak. We've got Thomas Greiss, and we got Brian Elliott, all of which are 37 years or more.
Okay, hot take.
Again, this is on the thought process that they want Schmidt in the AHL, and that they want someone else to pair with Vanacek potentially as a stopgap maneuver. Halak, Thomas Greiss, Brian Elliott, and I got one more name that's going to be my end piece.
I would be fine with Halak. I wouldn't want any of them, especially not Greiss, because he's a douchebag off the ice.
Yeah, isn't he like an actual Nazi? Like not even like
Yeah.
you know like hyperbole. Like isn't he like a real
Like
Nazi?
he's a neo-Nazi.
Our organization is so big on not that stuff that there's
Yeah.
no shot they bring in someone like that.
Yeah, I don't see it.
I only
see that
brought
one
his
happening.
name up so we could shit on him, really.
Let's go.
Yeah. But so you're there for
I love
Halak,
that.
no interest in Brian Elliott.
You know,
None and not even a little bit. No.
Any other comments before I get to my bombastic last goalie?
Can I interrupt you with a goalie of my own?
Sure. Go for it.
I don't know if this is your last guy. I'm sorry if it is. Dan Vladar.
Nope.
He's on the trading block because
why would that be anyone's guy?
I don't know, but I know he's on the trading block because Markstrom for some reason wants to stay in the atomic mess that is Calgary right now. I'd be fine with
It's
Vladar.
insane.
His numbers are bleh. I mean, if it's one of those, he's fairly cheap. He's only got 1 year. No, he's got 2. Never mind. He's got 2 years. I don't know if I want to commit to 2 at 2.2.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's no. I'm gonna say no. Yeah, if it was 1 year, I'd be like, yeah, whatever.
Right.
You know, it's 1 year. Not with that second year. I'm full out actually.
Yeah. And
So-
then BP, you had one.
Yeah, I got one more before we get the Oppenheimer atomic bomb last goalie here. But yeah, shameless plug. They're paying. You know, Christopher Nolan's paying me to say that now. But I don't think he's even close to available. But I've heard like rumblings of with the team rebuilding / just not being good that he has to come available eventually. What about Thatcher Demko?
Yeah, I really like Demko a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this last season I think was rough
got
on him,
term.
but he was great. What is this one down year for him?
Yeah, literally the only one.
Only down year. I really that doesn't concern me too much, especially on the. You guys know my thoughts on Vancouver. And actually, I actually like a lot of the Nucks players. My issues are really with the fan base, but I don't got to
They
get into
really
that.
are. They are the worst fan base.
For Demko, he's got 3 more years left at 5, so there would have to be some money to make that work.
Right.
He's 27. Age really lines up pretty great. So yeah, no, I'm absolutely there for Demko. I think acquisition cost is going to be pretty expensive.
Super high.
If he was trying to get out and brought that price down somewhat, but again, I think you would need retention. So I think he'd be pretty expensive. How expensive? I haven't actually thought too much on him. But yeah, no, depending on how much it would cost to get him, I'd be down for Demko.
Full silly season. We could also throw Quinn Hughes into that trade.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, I'm not looking to trade him because they're going to charge us an arm, 2 legs, and everything else. So, I mean, he's going to come here for free after 4 more seasons, so whatever.
Oh, exactly.
Any guesses on my last goalie?
How spicy is it?
You know his name, so it's not. You know who it is.
Is that's it? That's all I know is his name.
I mean, no, you know
Wait.
the veteran,
You said it was free agent, right?
free agent. Let me see
It's
if I can
gotta
throw
be-
out a little bit more.
It's got to be
age?
Corey Crawford, right?
No. Age is not that restrictive. He's not young, but we're not talking. He's not 37 plus like the other guys I named. He used to be really good, and he's not been very good for a long time. Bounced around in recent years.
Wedgwood?
Nope. I got
he's still
5
signed, isn't he?
5 more seconds, and I'm dropping the name.
Is
Longest tenured with the
he's
Sharks.
not, yeah, you can get an extent.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Played with Seattle last season.
Oh, Martin Jones?
Martin Jones. My man is currently 33 years old. He has had a bombastic recent stretch of play going back 4 or 5 seasons. But he plays. 48 games last year, 35 before that. He can handle a workload. He can handle a backup type role. He's a veteran guy. If Dawes has to go down, you want some sort of stopgap that will take a cheap deal. I mean, he will take a cheap deal, and he's not so old that he's looking to be out of the league quite yet. Martin Jones is out there. And if there's even hope of a certain, like if you want a John Gibson because you think his numbers in Anaheim are garbage, but he could bounce back, or any number of just goalies that had a poor stretch but had better play previously, I mean, Martin Jones is going to be the cheapest one. Free agent, he's going to take like a $1 million deal or something. So he's out there. It's an option.
I mean, that's fine. His goals saved of expected were -7, but he played 50 games, so it's that -7 is a lot less threatening than it sounds.
I mean, Seattle was really strong. I know it's goals saved above expected, so it's fairly separate from team. But yeah, 48 games. He can play. I think he might be a bit of a wild card option for the team if they are dead set on Schmid going down, and trading for a better goalie is just too high cost of acquisition.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with it. I don't really have any strong feelings one way or another on Martin Jones.
Do you guys have any final comments or thoughts to wrap up our goalie episode?
The answer is Corey Schneider.
I wish.
Very clearly.
I wish.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I got nothing of substance.
I'm only going to bring this up because we're talking goalies. I talked about it on my morning show, which means none of you heard this. So our EU amateur goalie scout is Anders Nilsson. Retired from the league, I believe it was just a couple seasons ago. Played 161 career games. Do you know what's a nice little interesting factoid about Anders Nilsson? He is the first NHL goalie to put a pride flag on his mask.
That's awesome.
And he was at development camp today working with our boys, and we were talking goalies, so figured it was a nice little tidbit to bring up.
Yeah, absolutely love to see that. No question about it.
Awesome.
Especially with the James
Speaking of which,
Reimers of the league.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be reporting in tomorrow from Dev Camp.
Yeah, me too, actually. I didn't tell you this. I'll be there tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. We actually get to well, let me know which side of the rink you're sitting on. I'll make sure to get the exact opposite.
Perfect. Then yes.
So we'll probably next episode, we'll see what kind of transpires over the next couple of days. We'll dabble in some more free agency, like winger defense talk, maybe. Maybe we'll do a deep dive on development camp because we will have gotten the 3-on-3 scrimmage. We're going to have multiple people there in person, so we can get some good thoughts about what we're not seeing from our media about it. I think that would be a lot of fun. But to wrap up the goalie discussion before we do outros, JP, did you want to plug something that might be coming up here soon?
Yeah.
Relevant to our goalie conversation?
Yeah, so I'm gonna have a spicy article coming out on the Hockey Writers within the next day or two about who I personally think the greatest goaltender of all time is. Keeping in mind that I write for the Sabres there and not the Devils.
It's still Brodeur. I don't care.
Yeah, whatever you say, man. Sure, I'll agree with that for the sake of the pod.
It's Akira Schmid, so
No, yes.
It's Vladar.
We'll see how that discussion plays out on Devil's Twitter and different social groups, and maybe we'll make that a topic for one of our episodes as well, because I know we don't all agree on exactly where you ended up with some of these goalies. So
Not even a little bit.
that'd be good.
No. I'll wreck you dorks when it comes to it.
Okay. All right.
We guys, we'll see you guys in a couple days. For anyone that does watch my morning show, I'll see you tomorrow morning. For Jake here, the other boys,
Jesper Bratt is the best player in the NHL.